Election season is heating up, and this week we have a new player in the game. Make that new players. A group of young, independent candidates is running for council in 2018. Among them is Pastor Ivan. Remember him? The guy who got arrested for wrapping himself on this flag, got released, left for the US, came back, and got arrested for complaining about fuel queues. The group of independents is under a coalition called POVO, which stands for the People's Own Voice. They say it's not a party, but well, let's be honest, it really looks like one. How well will they do? It's hard to tell, but we know it won't be easy. There's a lot of social media hype, but the launch itself was a bit low-key. And it's no big surprise. Traditionally, Zimbabweans aren't big fans of independence. Back in 1995, Margaret Longo became the first independent to be elected to parliament. Since then, it's been tough for independents. Those independents that have won did so because they had a backing of a bigger party, like Jonathan Moyo in 2008, who won after cutting a deal with the MDCT, or Temba Mliswa Norton, who won with the support of the MDCT and the ZANU-PF faction. The fact that we have just one independent MP in parliament right now tells you how hard it is. We hate to say this, but it's a fact. Zimbabwe is a two-party system. There's really not a lot of middle ground. We are polarized. Our voters don't even vote for candidates, they vote for parties. Doesn't matter who's on the ballot. They don't even know the name of the guy they're voting for. They see their party logo, they vote. But these young guys, they're trying to change that. Looking at the candidates, we see professionals, lawyers, accountants, entrepreneurs, and so forth. If they succeed, great. Because let's be honest, current Harare councillors are doing a pretty bad job. The books are a mess, traffic is a mess, waste management is a mess, we have dirty water coming out of our taps. It's simple. You can't have a good council when you have bad councillors. But how did we end up with bad councillors? Well, because some of you so-called professionals stayed away from politics. You said it's too dirty. So we have councillors who now know how to win elections, but don't know how to run a city. In fact, Harare Mayor Bernard Manyenyeni said most councillors are basically illiterate. They just don't know what they're doing. He said this in 2015. I would favor the inclusion of a non-partisan basis of individuals with minimum key skills. Of course, councillors don't like this, so they recall them. But he's not the only one. When Much Masunda was mayor of Harare, he had 57 councillors, 45 from the MDCT and 1 from ZANU-PF. Another 11 were special interest councillors. Now, of these 57, Masunda complained that less than 10 had any professional qualifications. That's right, less than 10 out of 57. He too suggested that councillors were basically illiterate. We need politicians in council. They're great at mobilizing residents and pushing for change. But we also need professionals. Why? Because councils work on a committee system. Every council has technical committees such as finance, health, or education. Councillors sit on these committees and they create policies. Now get this, when Masunda was mayor, there was nobody on the finance committee with any finance qualification. Not one. There was nobody on the HR committee with an HR qualification. None of the councillors who sat on the audit committee was a chartered accountant. Now this is a city with a budget of over 300 million in 2018. Would you trust someone with no financial skills with that kind of money? Who's going to keep those political stooges at townhouse in check? If those townhouse people start spending too much of ratepayers' money, don't you need councillors with the skills and knowledge to notice it? But you know what? It's easy to blame these councillors, but it's not their fault. Our politics is toxic. So it's the brave ones who stand for elections, not the smart ones. The professionals tell themselves, oh no, politics is too dirty for me. I have a reputation to protect. I have a career. We have bad councillors because they were brave enough to get involved. All you professionals stayed at home and complained. This is the same with our national politics. It's the rough guys that get elected. The so-called good guys are cowards. They never step up, at least until now. We've been talking about new players on the scene. Well, how about 100 new players on the scene? According to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, we have 112 political parties running in 2018. Yes, 112 so far, and we may have more. Recently, there was a meeting between ZEC and political parties. Dozens of them turned up, including these guys. The Zimbabwe Democratic Change, the ZDC. Not to be confused with the Movement for Democratic Change, the MDC. And some of these guys lack ambition, like this one, the Democratic Opposition Party. Obviously, they don't ever expect to be a ruling party. They'll always remain being the opposition party. Then there's the Righteous African Congratulatory Party. No idea what they're about, or who they're congratulating, and what for. Do you even know that we have our own EFF? Yes, the Zimbabwe Economic Freedom Fighters. Now what does this all mean? But we might find this funny now, but there are real issues here. First, if all these parties make it to the ballot, we're going to have to print a booklet to accommodate all of them. This will cost money. Remember, ZEC is already 50 million short on its election budget. Second, a long ballot will delay the voting process on voting day. Imagining voters having to go through dozens and dozens of names to find the presidential candidate they want to vote for. It may give us a lot of spoiled ballots this year. Third, we are all crying for equal coverage of parties on ZBC. But think about it. How is this going to work if ZBC tells us we are giving all 112 parties equal coverage? Remember, no party is more important than the other. ZBC doesn't have to cover only the big parties, they just have to cover everyone equally. And how will that work? But what can be done really? On one hand, democracy means if I want to form a party, I must be allowed to do so. But on the other hand, it will just make it harder to run this election smoothly. A presidential candidate has to pay $1,000 to be allowed to stand as the president. We are all about democracy, but we need to get a bit more serious. We need to raise the bar a little bit higher. And if we don't, we're going to spend hours and hours in the ballot booth trying to figure out our way around the Kambizi Party and the Zimbabwe Industrial and Technology Revolutionary Party. Yes, true story. There's an actual party called the Zimbabwe Industrial and Technology Revolutionary Party.